we are able to say that justice has been done.
A deadly mass shooting takes 10 lives and leaves 10 more wounded. Tonight, the suspect is dead, and the community of Monterey Park is left to wonder why it all happened.
The suspect who opened fire has been identified. What we are learning tonight about Huu Can Tran.
Getting help for the trauma of a mass shooting, why it may be especially challenging for some members of the Asian American community. Good evening to you. I'm Susan Hirasuna.
And I'm Christina Pascucci. We're happy you're with us on this somber evening. We begin with breaking news. Skyfox over Monterey Park, where just about 24 hours ago, a gunman entered this ballroom and opened fire. When he stopped shooting, 10 people were dead, another 10 wounded and rushed to area hospitals, and tonight that gunman is dead.
Here's what we know so far. As Christina mentioned, 10 people are dead. We know the name of just one of those victims. Another 10 were wounded. We don't know yet any of those names. The suspect died during a traffic stop in Torrance. He's been identified by authorities as Huu Can Tran, a 72-year-old man who most recently lived in Hemet. LA County Sheriff Robert Luna would not share any possible motive for the massacre.
We have team coverage of this tragedy. Christy Fajardo live in Hemet at the suspect's possible home. Ed Lascos in Monterey Park at a center to assist victims or their loved ones.
But we begin with Phil Schuman live at the Star Dance Studio in Monterey Park. Phil.
Well, tonight the crime scene investigators have left. The coroners have taken away the 10 bodies. We don't yet have their official identification, not yet been able to put names and faces with the shocking numbers, but we will. Meantime, this is what we know tonight about what happened right here 24 hours ago.
10:20 Saturday night. 2 rookie patrol officers respond to calls of shots fired at Star Dance Studio.
Piggy's radio saying there's multiple victims down.
Monterey Park's police chief describes the scene.
There were wounded people. There were people trying to flee out all the doors. They immediately went into action, and within just a couple minutes, those officers had entered the location looking for the suspect.
But the suspect was already gone. Some 20 minutes later, he showed up 2 miles away in Alhambra at the Lili Dance Studio. There, 2 people wrestled away his gun, and the suspect escaped before more lives were lost.
And he was disarmed by 2 community members who I consider to be heroes because they saved lives. This could have been much worse.
Security cameras at that Alhambra location provided this image of the suspect that was almost immediately released. And there was a description of his white cargo van. That van with stolen plates was pulled over by Torrance police officers about 11:30 Sunday morning. As they closed in, the suspect apparently killed himself with a single shot, later identified as 72-year-old Huu Can Tran. Authorities say evidence in the van linked him to the crimes. Still,
what was the motive for this shooter? Did he have a mental illness? Was he a domestic violence abuser? How did he get these guns?
No official information yet released on the victims. Just 5 men, 5 women, perhaps in their 50s and 60s. The process of identifying them and notifying families continued into Sunday night. Meantime, this message from Monterey Park's mayor.
Moving forward, our priority is to make sure that those victims, their family members, are given the assistance they need to heal and to get over this trauma.
Tonight, 7 people remain hospitalized. Governor Gavin Newsom here meeting with leaders, with victims, saying no other country in the world is terrorized by this stream of gun violence. He says real gun reform is needed at the national level. We're told the suspect last night was armed with what was described as a semi-automatic assault pistol with an extended magazine, which can typically hold up to 30 rounds, which are already banned here in California and many other states. Live in Monterey Park, I'm Phil Schuman, Fox 11 News.
Phil, thank you. Our team coverage of the Monterey Park massacre continues from Hemet.
Christy Fajardo is near the suspected gunman's last known address. Christy, what do we find there?
Yeah, well, I can tell you as we speak, there are several law enforcement agencies inside Tran's home. Let me take a step out so that I can show you. It is located in this assisted, or rather senior living facility, active senior living facility, I should say. And we can't get you any closer because it is private and it is gated, but I want to show you what it looked like when they served a search warrant.
1001 Florida Avenue, Unit 744, Sheriff's Department, search warrant. Come out with your hands up.
That was Riverside County Sheriff's deputies along with U.S. Marshals and Hemet police at Tran's home this evening. Neighbors say as far as they can tell, the 72-year-old lived alone. He lived there, they say, for about a year, but property records show he might have owned the home for much longer. Public records also show, besides that, he had lived in L.A. County, even in Monterey Park, but that was years ago, although he did have a P.O. box there more recently. He was also once married, but records show someone with the same name and birth date divorced in 2005. Neighbors say they don't know much about him, but add that he apparently taught dance.
Tran was just a nice guy. I mean, I'd see him riding his little small motorcycle in and out, and once in a while in his van, but he'd stop to pet your dog, and, you know, everybody around here just thought he was just some quiet little guy, you know. The people I've talked to are just stunned that he was involved in this and kept to himself. I mean, you'd see him out walking, but pretty much lived alone. And I guess he taught dance or something, ballroom dance, and one of the neighbors said, but he just, you know, I wasn't, this is all new to me, but he seemed like a nice guy. I mean, he wasn't like somebody I'd be afraid of, but I mean, hell, he was only about 5'5", you know, little guy. It's just weird that something like that would happen here. I mean, I'm happy that the police are involved and stuff, but you just don't know day to day who's who and what's what, you know. He didn't strike me as having an angry bone in his body, but that's just seeing him coming and going, so I don't know, but yeah, it's a little unnerving, I'll have to admit. But
We have seen some investigators leaving, but others are still inside, going over everything inside his home, trying to find some clue that might help explain why he allegedly went on that deadly rampage. Live in Hemet, I'm Christy Fajardo. Let's send it back to you.
Christy, thank you for that. Now we want to show you this video from the Lili Ballroom in Alhambra. It was recorded last night before the suspect walked in, about 17 minutes after the shooting in Monterey Park. Some people wrestled the gun he was carrying away from the suspect, and he ran from the the ballroom. The Lili was closed today, and tea and night dances are suspended until further notice. And according to the ballroom's Facebook page, all students and teachers will be searched before entering.
All right, and right now we want to bring in a special guest joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Judy Chu, who represents Monterey Park. Thank you for being with us on this somber evening. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's start. There's this message that you had during the press conference. It was such a powerful moment when you looked at the camera and spoke to your constituents, and you said your message is to feel safe. The danger is gone. Can you talk about that?
Well, we were so shocked and stunned to learn this morning about 10 lives being taken away from us due to this killer and 10 more being in the hospital. So many of us couldn't believe it. But what was even worse was the fear and terror in the eyes of our residents who didn't know if they should go to any of the Lunar New Year events or even send their children to school with an active shooter out there who could go to any event, any site, and shoot them as well. So all day long, law enforcement was bringing forth more details, the description of the gunman, the description of the van, and finally, at 5 o'clock, there was such huge relief at the press conference when it was announced that this active shooter is gone. He that he killed himself when he was surrounded. And I really have to commend law enforcement for what they did to bring this about.
Congresswoman, this feels like deja vu all over again. Would you be going back to Washington hoping for some kinds of real solutions? And it is sort of interesting that the man had an illegal weapon. California has very restrictive gun laws. So what can be the next step? Are we going to do this again, trying to move the ball towards some kind of true solution?
Well, I've been involved in common sense gun solutions since Sandy Hook. And we've had these mass shootings, but they've increased in frequency with Uvalde, with Buffalo, with Club Q, and now in Monterey Park. And we know what the solutions are. We know that people like this should not have guns. And we have a very common sense bill, the universal background check bill, which does save lives and keeps guns out of the hands of violent and criminal persons. But there are loopholes. And the loopholes are that you can evade the background check if you buy the guns online or at a gun show or from person to person. So we have to close those loopholes.
In addition to the questions you posed in terms of how he got that gun, you talked about, we want to know, was mental illness involved? What was the motive? There's so many questions left to be answered. Do we know anything more since that news conference that happened earlier this afternoon?
Well, I must say I found it interesting what your reporting showed, that he lived in Hemet and that he was a dance instructor. So he had that involvement somehow with Star Dance Studio. I just wonder, there are rumors out there that he was jealous of some woman in there that was dancing, and that's why he did this. We don't know. And maybe he was looking for her, didn't find her there, and then went to the second dance studio trying to find her and tried to do it again before the people wrested the gun away.
Do you wonder whether or not this kind of event will have any influence on your GOP colleagues in the House?
Well, I hope it does. We have to raise our voices, because what this shows is that this isn't a faraway thing. It could be your constituents. It could be your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones who could be next on the list. If we don't stop these mass shootings, then all of us will be in danger. But if we are able to put this under control, just imagine a life where we could feel at peace without the danger of dying at the hands of a bullet and a gun.
Representative Judy Chu, thank you so much for your time and your sentiments. The fallout from that horrible crime is only just starting to emerge. The shootings not only affecting the immediate victims, but their friends, family, and first responders as well.
Ed Laskos went to a victims assistance center in Monterey Park, not far from the crime scene, and he joins us live now with that part of our coverage. Ed.
And Christine, so many emotions playing out here at this crisis response center, from those in the community showing up wanting to talk to counselors, even though they did not know any of the victims, still hit hard, struck hard by this tragedy, to the story of a young dancer. He shows up here remembering an instructor who he says was one of the first to be shot and killed at that dance studio. Listen to his story.
It really hurts, and it's confusing, of course, and we're all searching for answers.
And searching for comfort as he deals with the loss of a friend from the Star Dance Studio, identifying one of the victims of the mass shooting as Ming Wei Ma, or Mr. Ma, as he was called.
He was extremely respected, very beloved, very caring teacher, instructor, extremely kind human being.
Mr. Ma was in his mid-60s, seen in these pictures posted on social media. He's also being called a hero by some of the witnesses for giving his own life, trying to save others.
He was the first to rush to try to stop the shooter.
That, as emotions are still raw, hours after the horrific shooting at the Ballroom Dance Studio. Several friends of the victims coming here. The Langley Center, now turned Crisis Response Center.
Very anxious. I was scared.
Not wanting to give his name, he rushed here in desperation, fearing his friend may have been one of the victims in that mass shooting. Finally, he is relieved, learning his friend is home, safe.
Well, we have a friend that goes there periodically, but when it happened, that night was too cold, so she decided not to go. And we finally reached her by phone just now.
Crisis response teams now turned first responders of another kind, helping all those who are left dealing with heartbreak.
It was comforting and kind of cathartic just to talk about it, because even between my husband and I, we didn't really process it too much. So it was good for us.
Governor Newsom even making an unannounced visit here to the Crisis Response Center, spending about an hour inside, encouraging all the counselors and the volunteers, while the Monterey Park police chief reaches out to his own young officers. They were the first to reach that chaotic, deadly shooting scene.
I'll go back upstairs and make sure that my officers are mindful of what took place and that they're in a good place tonight, because their wellness means a lot to me.
It's the fallout from a mass shooting that has now left many emotional victims in its path.
I really feel bad about the whole thing. It just hit really close to home, and I know the whole area very well, and just I feel for the victim. I'm hoping that the injured victims will recover soon.
And that is all of our hopes and prayers this late hour. Now live, all the senior citizen activities that have been planned, usually take place here at the Langley Center, have been postponed, canceled for the next week, as this center is now being turned into what they are calling a survivor center. It'll reopen first thing in the morning from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. And one of the volunteers telling me they expect it to be really busy here tomorrow, saying they're expecting a lot more folks from the community to come in as more of this tragedy sinks in, hits home. For now, we're live here in Monterey Park. Back to West LA we go.
All right, Ed Vasquez, thank you. This is LA County's deadliest mass shooting in 15 years.
10 people are dead, 10 others wounded, as we've been reporting, and a community is in mourning. Fox 11's Gina Silva has more from Monterey Park.
This community is absolutely devastated. So many people are heartbroken, while others are angry that another mass shooting has taken place.
I was just heartbroken that people can't just celebrate with their families and safely, it's just a scary world.
Our hearts and prayers go out to the victims.
Everyone's in shock, and yeah, just the timing of it, during the Lunar Festival, just very crazy.
It was supposed to be a time for celebration, but the Chinese Lunar New Year festivities came to a screeching halt around 10:20 on Saturday night.
Piggy's radio saying there's multiple victims down.
A gunman entered the Star Dance Studio at 122 West Garvey Avenue in Monterey Park. He began shooting at everyone inside.
I thought they were fireworks, but something in me told me that, they didn't really sound like fireworks. And then I heard the police rushing down.
When police arrived, they found a gruesome scene. Some 20 people had been shot. 10 were dead. The gunman was gone. David Duvall, a dance instructor at Star Dance Studio, wasn't there at the time of the shooting, but his student was, who described to David what she witnessed.
She hid under the table, and what else? She just said she was really scared. She saw the gunman. She said he had a long firearm, and she said she just didn't dare look at his face. And she said that the police got there, but after the gunman first finished shooting or whatever, maybe he ran out of rounds, I don't know, and he left, and then the police came.
About 20 minutes after the mass shooting, a male suspect walked into another ballroom in Alhambra, but the people at that location managed to take away his weapon.
I'm in this community a couple of times every week. I eat here, I go to the gym here, and I just felt like I wanted to bond with the community, and I came out today just to show my support.
It's a loss of life, and a loss of life is never an easy thing, because families are hurting, and we know we're dealing with a very serious problem in this country. We're not addressing mental health, which is something need to be addressed.
It is a tragedy. It happens again and again. I don't know why they don't make sure there's gun control. I don't want to see that happen again.
Gina Silva, Fox 11 News.
And for the latest on the deadly mass shooting in Monterey Park, tune into Good Day LA tomorrow morning starting at 4 a.m. and get updates on our website, foxla.com.